information. So the next step of your project, if you look on the wall over here on this side, you can see that Yulia and Crystal have created 3 very expressive compositions. They've done a really, really good job. They worked really hard on them. And so they have finished part 1 of this 3-part project by creating very expressive compositions using line work.
Is this the project that's due on the 13th that we're doing? Okay.
Yeah, it's due on the 13th. Yeah, and also everything is on Canvas in a module called Expression as Line. Have you looked at that? Okay. So you also know that you have 2 chapters that you need to read and 2 quizzes that you need to take. You already taken care of those? Good. So that's kind of foundational information that gets you ready to understand better what it is that you're trying to accomplish with this lesson. And of course, this lesson is going to build on the next lesson, or the next lesson is going to build on this lesson. So you're learning a little bit on this lesson, you're going to learn a little bit more on the next lesson or project, and everything's kind of building till it gets to the point where we're in that final big project and you're going to use everything that you've got. Got it? Have to search. So let's look at Yulia's composition. And I just picked this one. I don't know which one of these. Is this Yulia's? Yeah, this is yours, isn't it? Yeah. I don't know which final composition Yulia is going to select to turn in for this project, so don't let this influence the one that you want to do. It's just that this is a really good one for me to use. And so Yulia has created this composition. What brush did you use?
It was a skin brush that was like clothes.
Did you use one of your handmade brushes for it, or did you just use a traditional brush?
Traditional.
Just a traditional.
The one that I made is the top one.
You used your handmade brush for that? Okay, cool. So you need to have at least one of these compositions that incorporates the handmade brush. And so here are some examples of handmade brushes, artist-made brushes. And did you go on to Pinterest and did y'all go on to Pinterest and see what other artists had done with handmade brushes? It's pretty incredible, isn't it? Here's some brushes. That looks very nature-inspired, doesn't it? You know where I got this brush? Anybody want to take a wild guess where I got it?
In the backyard.
In the backyard? Pretty close. Wish it was my backyard where I found it. On the beach?
Nah, out this building somewhere.
No, I found it on the beach, and it looked just like that when I found it on the beach. So it's just some sort of grass that washed up on the shore, but I thought it would make a cool brush. I haven't used it as a brush yet, but all of these just kind of washed up on the shore, and I thought, well, that's freaky. Just kind of like self-made brushes there, right? So I brought them in. I thought y'all might think those were weird. Okay, so one of your composition needs to have your handmade brush because you're also going to take a photograph of that. But let's say now we're going to move on to part 2. And part 2 is dealing with pattern. We all just talked about what pattern is. It's basically a mark that repeats itself. And so we have different examples of pattern. Can I see your face photo that yeah. And pattern is something that's been used for centuries upon centuries. Here is a vessel that uses a pattern up here on the neck, also pattern around the circumference of the vessel as well. So when you start looking at pattern like this, can I have that pattern? Yeah. This is kente cloth. And you can see the pattern evident in this cloth, right? Here's an example of pattern in architecture. This is the Taj Mahal in India. And you see a lot of geometric pattern going on here. But another thing that you see in this pattern is a variety of patterns, right? Not just one pattern, but a variety. And anytime you have a variety of patterns, you begin to create something called rhythm. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. But you see the variety of patterns? You can begin to sense a visual rhythm. And most of the time we associate rhythm with music. You can feel a rhythm here. Another thing that you notice is that this pattern of geometric shapes and floral shapes on this architecture is associated with a specific culture, a Mughal culture. This pattern, kente, is associated with a specific culture. Remember the plaid shirt that Ree showed us? Plaid is associated with a specific culture. So patterns can begin to represent cultures, specific groups of people who hold similar beliefs. So patterns can represent different things. So what you're going to do with your composition is you're going to select a mark within that composition. And let's say Yalia wants to select this mark right here, this big dot and this little dot right here. So she's going to photocopy this, because I don't want her to destroy this by cutting it out. But she's going to photocopy this, and the photocopier's down in the print lab. And she might want to photocopy it like 12 times, because she's going to need to repeat this dot and create an overall pattern, something called an overall pattern. So how many times does she want it to repeat? How big does she want it, or how small does she want it? Is she going to try to communicate something with her pattern? Those are all decisions that she's got to make. And that's one of the biggest aspects of design, decision making. You got to make decisions about what it is you're doing. And oftentimes those decisions they're intuitive. They can only be made by you and your sense of aesthetics or the way you want it to look. But pattern is that principle that you're going to hold on to. And we know what pattern is. Crystal had the best, you just read it right out there. So just a repetition of shapes, lines, is that kind of what you said? Yeah. So you're going to use one of the shapes within a composition that you've created, and you're going to create an overall pattern. And I want you to create that overall pattern on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So let's say Aaliyah wanted to use that dot. Well, she's got to make a decision about, is she going to position it kind of like that? Is she going to make it about that big? How far apart is she going to make it? Plus, when she starts repeating it in the space below, is she going to repeat it on a diagonal? Or is she going to repeat it on a perpendicular, like an XY grid? So she's got a lot of decisions to make about how her pattern is going to look. Now, the next step of this project is that you're going to pick another mark. Maybe let's say she picks this one, and she's going to create another pattern with this mark. Got it? Because she needs at least 4 complete patterns to be able to go on to part 3 of this project, which is to create a composition that uses her 4 patterns to begin to create rhythm.